like that picture. It's a slightly younger me. There you go. That was before COVID, by the way. Oh, and actually, I need my clicker. Or how does that work? How you doing? I'm going to involve you in this conversation. So I'm going to do this differently than most presentations. It's going to involve some dialogue, some me walking around, and questions and answers from the audience, just because I feel like livening it up for this afternoon session. So if you're awake, raise your hand. If you're not awake, raise your hand. If you're not going to raise your hand, no matter what I say, raise your hand. There's always a few people, and there you go. There. Okay, so I remember coming to the first Democracy for All conference a few years ago, and the concept of DAOs was very nascent at that point. It wasn't a discussion topic, really. There's a few brave souls that threw it out there, but now it seems to be taking over. I think that's maybe in part because DAOs are very much associated with decentralized finance, with DeFi. And the idea is, in order to successfully get away from standard centralized regulation of financial markets, you want to have a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization running it. So I just heard a fantastic term used in the speaker's lounge I'd never heard before, and you're all free to use it. It's called DAO washing. Who's heard of greenwashing or pinkwashing? Like greenwashing is when you take something that's normally environmentally unfriendly, do enough public relations, do enough framing of the issue that it looks like it's environmentally friendly, but it's really not. That's greenwashing. Well, now I've heard a new term, DAO washing. Did I get that from you? No, you don't want to admit to it? Wasn't that you? See, I'm gonna totally break protocol just because I feel like it. Come here for 1 second. So don't be shy. So what would you say DAO washing? Say who you are and explain what DAO washing is.
Hi, I'm Alex, and really interested in this kind of new fantastic opportunity of kind of the way society is changing and new paradigms for structuring businesses and opportunities and social enterprises. But at the same time, it's kind of, if you scrape the surface, in a lot of cases, it's going, oh, it's really cool, it's a DAO. It's like, okay, it's really cool, it's a DAO. So like, and it's like actually underneath, it's a DAO that's run by 3 people or 5 people or
So you're saying a organization run by 3 people isn't really decentralized? That's radical.
So what I'm really saying is that when DAOs are structured on the people who have the most money get the most votes, it basically ceases to be democratic and doesn't really have much to do with the future that we really need at the moment, in my view.
I love it. So everyone can now use the term DAO washing. So my thesis is that DAOs go beyond basic governance. They go beyond new ways of running decentralized finance projects. The real promise of a DAO, I'd argue, is political. And you can make a statement, if you like, that everything boils down to politics. Everything boils down to how human beings relate to each other. Their power relationships, their economic relationships, their social relationships. That's what I would consider politics writ large. And one thing that's concerned me since 2010 or so, though it's been a progressive development over time, is with these online platforms becoming where we communicate, and with the shrinking of the public square, the shrinking of the meeting in real life. Of course, this is an exception, thank God. But with things moving online because of COVID, because of technology, because of distributed workforces, and those online venues of communication being commercial hands, we're seeing a shrinking of the public square. We're seeing a shrinking of what you can say online, whether it's a controversial political opinion, whether it's a not controversial political opinion, whatever it is. We're now in kind of a world of censorship, and companies can censor in ways that governments can't. Okay, companies can censor based on their own economic interests, and because they're not the governments, or not the government, or not acting on behalf of the government, usually, they're not constrained by legal controls on freedom of speech. So I believe that DAOs provide a useful communications alternative to the Facebooks of the world, to the Googles of the world, to a lot of these other applications that have become the sort of new public square, but are not open to free and fair communication. So you can disagree with me, we can have a dialogue about it, but I suggest that DAOs are a way to change things for the better. And this is, of course, about democracy for all. By the way, I'm a fast talking guy. Am I too fast? Am I just right? How are we doing? I got a thumbs up. I got a middle finger. No, I didn't actually. It's okay. Okay, so let's kind of go back to basics for a moment. Just one of my favorite expressions is explain it to me like I'm 5 years old. I can say that because I'm a lawyer, right? I need things explained to me like I'm 5 years old. You know, what is a DAO really? What are we looking at? What do those words mean? Because each one of those words has meaning, right? DAO, decentralized autonomous organization. Decentralized in the sense that the blockchain is, when it's done right, is decentralized, that no one is in charge, no single node rules, no one element of a network or group of people can dominate the others. Communications can't be censored not because everyone's playing sort of nice, but just because no one grouping on that network or in the organization has sufficient power to roll back what's happened before or to shut anyone up. Sometimes that's an advantage, sometimes that's a disadvantage, but that's the benefit of decentralized. This is as opposed to traditional groupings or organization where you have a hierarchical structure where you can attack the top or the middle or diagram it out or make it comply because someone at the top gives orders and people below follow those orders. You know, we used to have hierarchical networks. You used to have hierarchical companies, or we still do, but they're kind of changing over time. Decentralized means it's a flat organization. It's a flat network. Autonomous. What does the word autonomy really mean in the sense of a DAO? Right? There's a lot of argument and discussion about this. It's not the same as decentralized, right? Autonomous generally means that the DAO does not require anyone else's permission in order to engage in economic activity, right? Economic activity, because politics without economics is useless, right? And I mean economics in the broad sense of creating incentives for people to act, punishments or negative incentives if they don't. For a group to be autonomous, truly autonomous, it has to be able to create and sustain its own economy, whether that's through tokens, whether that's through governance, whether that's through reputation. Without autonomy, then you basically have an organization that may be decentralized, but it's beholden to something else. It's dependent on something else. So it's a little bit of nuance there. There's some argument about what that word means. I suggest, this is sort of the majority opinion, and Dan Larimer came out with this, it's sort of Vitalik, that it's really having your own economy that makes you autonomous. And organization, people throw away that word like without really thinking about it. What makes an organization an organization? Is this group here in this room an organization? I'd argue we're not. We're a gathering. We're potentially a community, but we're not yet an organization. The organization is a grouping of two or more people who come together to accomplish a task over time, right? So, and an organization has a certain identity that is not ad hoc. It goes on over time and it has a mission. It's not just necessarily a bunch of people in a room. That's a crowd, right? So it's not just a peer-to-peer relationship. We can all be talking to the person to our left and our right, but that doesn't necessarily make us an organization. So an organization is something beyond the individual members. It has its own identity. It has its own capacity for action. It has its own persistence beyond any individual member and the people who come and go. So I'd say those are the three essential elements of a DAO. You can have, and let me tease out another idea. You can have organizations on the blockchain that aren't DAOs. There's no rule that says you can't take a standard company form, like an LLC, a limited liability company, or anything, a regular corporation, and move it onto the blockchain. You could potentially do that, and I think there's even a use case for that, but that is not the same thing as a DAO. A DAO is something more than, to the prior point, it's more than just moving an organization onto the blockchain. It has to be decentralized, autonomous, and there to accomplish a mission. So why does this matter? The fundamental thesis is that it's very hard as individuals to affect change. Sometimes you can do it if you're someone extraordinary, or you have an extraordinary moment. But in truth, even those people that we think changed the world, you know, Steve Jobs, whoever, they would not have gone anywhere near where they got without thousands, if not more, of unsung heroes working beside them, pushing the same agenda. It's very hard as an individual to push change. We can only truly create change as organized groups. We need to be able to work together to accomplish things. But what if the communications that allow us to work together are being intercepted? What if they're being censored? What if they're being modified? What if we're self-censoring because maybe we're not being allowed to speak our minds, right? So the only effective action is group action. And if you can't engage, you can't form groups and can't operate as a group, then you can't engage in action, whether it's political or otherwise. And if the means of that communication, the means of that coordination is being censored, we have a problem. So, and also if you can't operate it as a group, you're more subject to, you're more subject to divide and conquer tactics. You can get stymied. People who are trying to keep incumbents in power can delay change. It's, if you're in a situation that's bad or restrictive, it can be quite frustrating if you're not able to form a group. Raise your hand if you can relate to what I'm saying. Really, no one? Okay, some people in the front row. There you go. I see some smiles, though. I think you do. All right, so let's talk about sort of the politics or the law behind speech and why it's important. So in the US, we have the First Amendment, and I'll just read it. This is my favorite amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment religion or the prohibiting of free exercise thereof, or here's the main part, or abridging the freedom of speech or the press or the right of the people to peaceably assemble. Okay, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for the redress of grievances. In other words, the US Constitution doesn't just in the First Amendment talk about free speech, it talks about the right to assembly, the right to form groups. Okay, the founders back in 17 whatever, 87, if you're talking about the Constitution, not 76 or 83, realize that it's not enough just to be able to speak. You need to be able to act in a group. You need to be able to assemble. Well, if you can't do that online because you're being censored, you're not really free. This is not just a US concept. This is a universal concept. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights in Article 20 says basically the same thing, right? Or Article 19, you have freedom of speech. Article 20, everyone has the right to a freedom of peaceable assembly and association. The flip side of that is sort of the anti-communist one. No one may be compelled to join an association. I feel like you're feeling me on this one, yes? Okay. And how's my magic clicker going? There you go. So just to kind of recap the point I made before, I feel like our right to free speech and assembly has been compromised. You can't have private clubs anymore. Now, private clubs have been abused in history. They've been used, unfortunately, for racist or sexist purposes. But there's also private clubs that aren't for those purposes, that really are for like-minded people to assemble, whether they're Furbies or they're into politics or they're libertarians or they believe in they want to collect old coins. It's very hard to maintain a private club anymore. Sometimes you need a safe space of people that are like-minded so you can kind of develop your ideas without being instantly attacked. And so it's the lack of this ability to organize exclusive groupings in person or online is driving people to basically do it underground. I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. And I think when you have a more structured rules-based online system for allowing these groups to form, you have more freedom. Free speech, like I mentioned, is being banned online and under control. And then the groups are being subject to big tech, Facebook, Google, and so forth, and they interfere regarding the organizations or the formations of groups and the expression of those groups' points of view. So DAOs can potentially solve these issues. Okay, you don't need anyone's permission to form a DAO. You don't have to go, yes, sir, yes, please, yes, government. You don't have to ask. You can just do it, right? You don't need a charter. Okay, unlike a corporation in the United States or anywhere else, you don't need to go ask the government for a license to commit to engage in business as a DAO. You don't need to get a license or file a charter to form a political association if you're a DAO. It's actually quite a beautiful thing. What makes DAOs great in terms of governing themselves? Because they're on the blockchain, because they're using smart contracts, the way they operate is known. They don't necessarily hide in the shadows. In fact, I'd argue that they're more transparent and more free and more libertarian, if you like, than traditional type organizations. You can see how they operate. You can see how they're voting. You can see how they're governing themselves, and you can see how they change. You can see how people participate. DAOs, part of forming a group, whether it's religious or political or anything else, is knowing who you want to associate with and who you don't want to associate with. You can argue about whether that's good or bad, but DAOs at least preserve your individual right to do that. And DAOs cannot be disbanded from the outside. A DAO can choose to dissolve itself, okay, but no one can make it dissolve itself. And I personally feel that if you believe in liberty and expression, that's an important value. Now, here's the question. Actually, let me just take a poll. Let me just take a quick poll. Who here believes that you should be able to operate anonymously online? I'm gonna raise my hand to both of this so I don't influence the crowd. Okay, who believes that your identity should be known when you operate online? I'm gonna raise my hand no matter what. Sometimes, maybe. Well, I'm gonna wrap this up with a cute cartoon from the New Yorker. There was an article that came out maybe 15 years ago where they said on the internet, no one knows you're a dog. Well, the new version of this is on the internet, everyone knows you're a dog. So I don't know whether autonomy or privacy is necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, but we live in interesting times. So that's my fast argument about DAOs and politics. And I finished exactly on time. So bless you all. Welcome to Barcelona. To me, thank you so much.